Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Product Manager, Information Software, Chiroyu Shah.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. We're going to talk about big data journey within connected enterprise today. So let's get right into it. You've all heard of big data at some level. You've read publications. You've read analyst reviews or articles or blogs. The best definition that I could find on big data comes from Gartner. It talks about the 3V model. It's about high volume, it's about high velocity, and it's about high variety of information. So what does this terms mean? Volume refers to the fact that there is increasing need to store terabytes and petabytes worth of data. Just tremendous amount of data that's being generated. For example, there might be millions of tweets that are being logged just today. There might be people in the audience that are logging tweets right now. I encourage you to do it if you're not. And you need to store that and analyze it. You don't need to look at that after the fact to see what's going on, what the consumer sentiments are. There's also a high variety of information. There is social media. There are different sets of images and videos that are being stored out there that you need to analyze, you need to look at it to figure out what's going on with your process, with your products, with your company, and the customer sentiment. So it's about structured and unstructured data. Let's look at some examples on how companies are making use of big data today. Walmart is a great example of high volume. They are tracking 1 million transactions from their stores worldwide every hour. Every single hour, they have 1 million transactions coming into their data server, reporting all the customer transactions that are being stored within their data repository that equates to 2.5 petabytes worth of data. Put that in context, that's equivalent to 167 times more information than what exists in US Library of Congress, collectively. Just tremendous amount of volume being generated and being stored every hour, every day, every year. FICO is a great example of a company that's tracking this information in real time. So we're talking about velocity, not only storing data, but having that data available to you in real time so you can make better decisions. They're tracking 2.1 billion accounts in real time to protect their customers against frauds. They're worried about security. They're worried about frauds against their customers, transactions that are happening in real time. So again, looking at all this data, analyzing in real time from their big data repository. And when it comes to big data, high variety of information really started with social media. You have tremendous amount of information that's coming either from your check-ins at different geographical locations that you're in, your message boards, your blog updates, your pictures, your videos. There is unstructured data everywhere. Your documents, your emails. There's a tremendous amount of information that's coming together that companies are now required to store and analyze to make better decisions. Facebook is a great example of that. They have 2.1 billion customers. They have 500 billion pictures that are out there that are looking at this data in real time. So let's bring this back to manufacturing. Manufacturing alone today generates 2 exabytes worth of data. Tremendous volume, the largest sector in producing data. Where does this data come from? It comes from your smart devices. It comes from your RFID technology, where you're tracking your process not only from your suppliers, but into your manufacturing, into your warehouse management system, and into your ERP system. It comes from all these predictive maintenance type tools that you have that has smart enabled devices that has this data. It also comes from customer sentiments. Manufacturers today have their Facebook pages. They're tracking their social media networks to figure out what customers are using, what products, what geographics, what are their buying patterns, and they're trying to analyze that across their supply chain to figure out what products to bring to market and what promotions to offer. So there is tremendous amount of information out there. There are customers and companies that are taking advantage of this. How do we bring this back to manufacturing and what our world is? There's also a tremendous amount of investments that are being made in companies that are trying to take advantage of big data. For example, a friend of mine is an enterprise architect at one of the large clothing retail company in the US. They are spending $6 million just this year in pulling together their big data infrastructure. They have about 150 server cluster that they are pulling together in their state-of-the-art data server. They are spending money in training and coaching people into big data technology to take advantage of this. But not everybody has big budgets. Not everybody has requirement to analyze all this structured and unstructured data. At Rockwell Automation, what we think is big data's power comes from the analytics that it provides. Your ability to analyze data after you stored it to figure out what patterns are emerging from this, what decisions can we make predictively so that we can improve our processes and performances. So it's really not about big data. It's about having just the right amount of data. Having data available to you to make better decisions in real time or when you need it the most. So I'm going to introduce you the concept of right data to right people to make right decisions. So it's really as simple as that. It's getting that data to those people who are empowered to make better decisions and having that data available to them so that they are more successful against their KPIs or their objectives or what their organizations are most interested in. So what is right data? Right data refers to the fact that having data available to you so that you are making better decisions. How do you know if you have the right data? How do you know when you have achieved that status around your critical processes or around the critical assets that you have so that you can make better decisions? And how do you know when you have it? Maybe you start with your most critical asset in your plant. Maybe it's about that asset that's most expensive that you need to collect data around. Or maybe it's just the process that's causing you the most bottlenecks or performance issues. That's where you need to start collecting data. So again, focusing on what's most important to you and collecting data around that, that might be the start of your right data journey. Another perspective that I can offer up is think about what's the end, or start with the end in mind. What I mean by that is focus on what you want to get out of this information and then start collecting data around it. We have a big customer of ours that we were working with, and they were trying to figure out their data management strategy. Ultimately, after several hours of conversations, we came back to them and said, they were struggling, and we came back to them and said, what do you really want to get out of this information? We took a simple cocktail napkin, drew a couple of dashboards, and they said, this is exactly what we need. We need this dashboard on my line performance. We need this information on my energy consumption. This is exactly what my management is measuring me on. So this would be a great example where we took that data, we took that dashboards, and turned it into the data that they needed so they can then real-time report against those KPIs and make that data available to their management or make better decisions. Good news is, majority of you are collecting some level of data today. You have real-time data or near real-time data for your operators. You're doing some trending in your HMI, and you're collecting that data so that your operators are more efficient in making decisions. The key here is that beyond this operator level, are you getting data to your other parts of organizations? Are they enabled to make better decisions? Do they have data to make those decisions? So at this point, I'm going to introduce you to a concept of manufacturing cookies. And who really doesn't love cookies? So we're going to talk about the cookie manufacturing process and how some of these principles will be applicable to that. So a simple cookie manufacturing process includes 5 steps. It starts with mixer, where you take the key ingredients, your flour, your sugar, your fats, you combine them, create a dough, let it ferment. then it goes through your molding process. You bake it in the oven, and then it goes through the cooling process at room temperature, and then it goes into the packaging process. It's a simple 5-step process to make cookies and ship them. So if you go back to our write data story, what we're thinking here is our critical asset might be that mixer. So if you're collecting data around that mixer, what are the recipes? What is my batch ID that I'm producing? Maybe the information that you're most interested in is the oven temperature. Maybe you're looking at energy consumption data. There could be some of these data points that if you start collecting, that could be useful to you after the fact to do some analysis. So once you start collecting data, the question is, how much data is enough? Typically, people think in today's world that disk space is so cheap, we can collect all sorts of data and analyze it later. Most likely, that's not a bad strategy. You can do some deadbanding and compression in today's historians or databases where you can store the data more effectively and retrieve it more effectively. You can also store data at a high scan rates and then only store more slower fidelity data into your databases after the fact if you're collecting a lot more data. But the key to our success is not having all sorts of data, but having right data so you can improve your decision making. Some of you are probably not collecting any data today because you don't have any performance to improve or any process to improve. And maybe that's okay for you, but for majority of us, we need to have some data so that we can make better decisions. So going back to our circles, now that we have the right data strategy in place, and frankly, that's probably the easier piece in this equation. Where companies struggle the most is getting that information to right people. It's having those people empowered and having that data visible to them so they can improve what they are doing today. So let's talk about this. Who are these right people? What are the roles within your organizations that need this information? And are you really making this data available to them in real time or when they need to make decisions? So in our cookie manufacturing, going back to that production line, the cookies are slowly being overcooked. Nobody's around to see it. How do we know if those cookies are being overcooked? And who's really there to make a decision to improve that situation? We'll explore that a little bit here. In a typical plant environment, it could be very many different roles. It could be 20 different roles with 20 different people that are responsible for different functions. A plant manager, a line supervisor, a maintenance engineer. Maybe it's just the food engineer who's responsible for the recipe. So in our case, the food inspector or the food engineer who was changing recipe to make softer cookies might be the person that needed to know this information. So having that data available is critical for his success and organization's success. And having that data available to that right person is the most important fact. What is also most important is understanding within the organization that right data is available, that everybody is not creating their own solutions to analyze the issue on hand. A lot of times what happens is people rely on, this is how we've always done it. This is what my gut says. This is how historically things have happened, so we must do it this way. But having data-driven decision-making as a cultural change within your organization is very important for your success. So let's take an example. A large customer of ours had this scenario happen to them. A forklift operator was walking around and noticed an alarm on the screen. He pointed out to the operator, said, "What are you doing with this alarm? It's on your screen." The operator said, "I've seen this alarm such a long time. It's almost a white noise. I don't know how it's affecting my process, so I'm just ignoring it." But now that this person pointed it out, he started looking into it. And what he realized was that they were using incorrect oil type for their machine. So in this case, they were able to take a corrective action because a person pointed it out, the issue, and it wasn't the right person, actually. It happened to be an innocent bystander that pointed it out, but the right person got to know the information and was able to take corrective action and was able to improve the performance of the machine. So having right data to right people is very critical. Even if all these strategies are in place, the data itself has to be more relevant, has to be more accurate, and has to be timely and simple. So how does the RATS sound? This is what you can take away from this presentation. Your data has to be RATS. Well, maybe it's not as exciting. How about STAR? So your data has to be your STAR. It has to be simple. It has to be something that people can visualize and take corrective action. We often joke about higher up in the management you go, you need to create pretty pictures, pretty graphics, less words on the slide. But there is some reality to that. If you make that data simple, your people or the people that are most responsible for the actions can take better decisions. It has to be timely. When somebody needs to make a decision, it shouldn't be the case where they request a report and it shows up in their inbox 7 days later. It has to be something that is available in timely fashion. It has to be very accurate. If you're going to have a culture of data-driven decision-making, your data has to be accurate and everybody has to believe in it. And then it has to be relevant. It has to be tied to the organizational goals or KPIs that you're most interested in. It should be that OEE, it should be that performance management, it should be that energy consumption data, it should be whatever that goal that organization has, it should be that data that's available to them. So going back to our cookie manufacturing example, where the cookies were slowly being overcooked, if the food engineer knew when he changed the recipe that he was overcooking the data because dough was being cooked incorrectly, he could have taken corrective action and avoided losses. It might have been the line supervisor who increased the temperature to increase the count of the cookies to reach some orders that he had. But having that data available to that right person could have avoided losses that they incurred. In a typical plant environment, it's not as simple of just having oven temperature. It could be that you need to have data from disparate data sources, from your supply chain, from your warehouse management, from your ERP systems, or just from your production line. Has to be you need to correlate some of this data to make better decisions. And that's important for people who are responsible for those decisions. So if you had all this data, and if you had the right people accessing this data, you can begin this journey. But most likely, the biggest impediment is not the process or the strategy. It's the culture of the organization. So it's been said before that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what I mean by that is unless you have buy-in from the people who are responsible to make decisions, and unless they understand the importance of this, you're not going to achieve the results that you are looking for. To give you an example around this, I worked at Wendy's when I was in school. Yes, a vegetarian kid was flipping burgers. And I learned how to flip burgers. But management introduced this concept where they started posting our performance on a screen. So they started tracking our time either from dining or from drive-through, and what was our order fulfillment time. Initially, there was some resistance with this. But quickly, our competitive juices started flowing. We realized that they were posting the best time for the shift and then the best time for the day. And they were comparing us against our friends from different shifts. So it turned into this team activity where everybody started pinching in. If the grill boy was slower, the sandwich person was helping the fryer person. And we were all synchronized, and we're trying to improve our performance, and we're trying to achieve the best possible time. Let's bring that back to manufacturing. a large customer of ours had issue with their warehouses. They were trying to improve their operator performance from the forklift guys. They introduced the scorecard concept. They started showing the performance of these individual operators on a daily basis. Initially, there was moaning and groaning and maybe some cheers for the guys who were performing better. But eventually, that turned into a performance improvement exercise where everybody started performing at a higher level because they were being shown their performance and they had access to this data in real time. To the point where the performance improved up to 99.8%, and they didn't need the additional quality resources that they had hired in the warehouse to track the progress. There is a great article in Harvard Business Review in December 2013 that talks about the need of big data and cultural shift that needs to occur around this. A couple of key points that I want to point out here. One is having single version of truth. Having a database that is, or having information store that everybody relies within a company, regardless of what role you're serving. So you could be an operator or you could be an executive. But if you're looking at the information and improving that data store and relying and making everybody believe in that data store, that will go a long way. Start asking that question, what would data tell you? If we had access to this data, what would the result be? Rather than relying on, this is how we've always done it, or this is what my gut says. And this will improve your culture. It will shift you towards data-driven decision-making as an organization. So bring it back to our concept of right data, having right people making right decisions, and enabling them to make better decisions. If you start on this journey, you will quickly realize that you are collecting more information or you're being required to collect more information because the culture is shifting towards that. People are looking to get better data-driven decisions, and they're looking for better information for you to improve. So it really comes down to having the right amount of data, having ability for you to collect data. Remember we talked about collecting data with end in mind. So having that data available, taking advantage of this big data concepts, really without worrying about million-dollar infrastructures, worrying about all these other additional resources that you are required. It's taking advantage of those concepts for you to make better decisions. So I want to really leave you with 3 steps with this talk. The first one is really learn about the concepts. It's very easy to get lost in the big data, and it's very easy to get confused about all the different publications that are out there. But just learn about what big data is, what you can really take advantage of within your organization. And there are concepts that are scalable that you can take advantage of without requiring large investments. Plan your data collection. Think about who's going to make those decisions, who's critical to your success, do they have right information available today or not, in timely fashion. Remember, we talked about having data as your star, having that timely, accurate information and relevant information so that people are able to make better decisions. They're empowered to make better decisions. And then having visibility of that data. It's ability for you to visualize that content so those people have access, they are empowered, and the culture that comes with it that changes your data-driven decision-making to something that is more successful or that brings more success to your organization. The journey is going to come with a lot of challenges. Rockwell can provide you technology and tools that enables you on that journey, but the cultural shift has to happen from within. It has to come from you, and remember the examples that we talked about individuals enabling data access to them so they are able to make better decisions. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful rest of the day and wonderful rest of the conference.